I think we're ready. Okie doke. Good morning. Welcome to Wellspring. My name is Martha Ward, and I'm part of your Sunday service, Sunday, June 13th service team. Now we have a few announcements. Early Bird meets Sunday mornings at 9:30 via the Zoom link, and that is in the weekly email, and it's on the website. We are fully open, and we encourage you to join us in person and enjoy the hugs. We will maintain the hybrid service. There is a list of 17 volunteer opportunities in the social hall and in the weekly email. Please review and consider how you can help Wellspring function. To volunteer, contact Judy in person or at Wellspring at hotmail.com. wellspringntc@hotmail.com. The Board of Trustees met last Wednesday, and Edward is going to join us on the podium to give us a brief report.
Yes, good morning. Just quickly, a rundown of what happened in the board meeting this last Wednesday. First of all, Wellspring is in a great financial position, and we have treasurer's report charts in the social hall on the tables there. The board formally accepted the contract with Barry Shaw as Director of Music Ministry at Wellspring. Welcome, officially. After several months of discussion, the board has decided to adopt a team approach to the spiritual leadership of our church. The spiritual leadership team will be Peggy Shinn, Kamatara, and me. These three will provide the spiritual direction, speak monthly on Sundays, and give the opportunity for classes in the future. All have their own strengths and bring a varied perspective to new thought for the benefit of the Wellspring community. And as a side note, yesterday Kamatara graduated from ministerial school, and we watched it on Zoom here in the sanctuary. And we have a card over in the social hall that you can sign, and we'll send it off to her, and congratulations. Because the three members of our ministerial team have additional duties and responsibilities outside of Wellspring, they will be supported by the pastoral care team. The pastoral care team is identified in the Sunday handout, and that team will help by making the hospital visits, sending cards, and provide in-person support when the spiritual leaders are unable to do so. And lastly, we made an appointment of Brenda Wauer to become an additional member of the board. Part of that is that she's been doing a great deal of work for us. She has been on the board before, and we value her input. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Edward. Our upcoming speakers for June are today. We have Peggy Shinn with us. And then on the 20th, Kamatara will be speaking, and on the 27th, Randy Granger. And lastly, our prayer team remains ready to serve and support you. You may submit a request via our webpage, or you may contact Martha Ward or Geneva Collins with your request. Our prayer team meets virtually on Tuesday afternoons at 4:15 to pray with you. You may consider sitting in your quiet space during that time. We know we are one in spirit, and the energy of prayer knows no limits. So now if you'll join with me in this invocation, we, excuse me, we tune inside and acknowledge the presence of spirit around, through, and within us, operating as us. And we know that that spirit is the creative force behind all that exists. And we acknowledge our oneness with spirit, our oneness with one another here in the sanctuary and on Zoom, our oneness with the entire Wellspring community, Las Cruces, New Mexico, this country, and the entire planet. And we see this loving energy permeating and forming a network throughout the planet at all levels, above and below, in, through, and around this great earth called Gaia, and each and all of its living creatures, which includes the rocks and the soil and the plants. And so we release these words and we say, and so it is. Now, please stand if you are able. We will sing the song of joy. I will surrender to my highest good.
Do it again. I will surrender to my greatest, highest good. I will release any fear that blocks my way. For every step I take is taken in pure faith, and I am stronger every moment, every day. My mind is willing and my heart is open wide. I trust my instincts and let spirit be my guide. I vow to live a life that's free and true and free as I continue walking in this mystery. I will surrender to my greatest, highest good. I will release any fear that blocks my way. For every step I take is taken in pure faith, and I am grateful every moment, every day. There may be walls and there may be roadblocks in my way, but I can choose to take a higher path each day. And now I know that what I thought and sound was only habit and regret that held me down. I will surrender to my greatest, highest good. I will release any fear that blocks my way. For every step I take is taken in pure faith, and I am kinder every moment, every day.
Please be seated and let us read together our vision, mission, and affirmation. Our vision: to elevate spiritual consciousness in our world. Our mission: to support individual spiritual quests through celebration, study, counsel, loving fellowship, and service. Our affirmation: I know that my word penetrates any unbelief in my mind. I relax and let a power greater than myself work for me, in me, and through me. Everything in my world works harmoniously and divinely. I know that divine wisdom operates in every aspect of my life. And now we have special music.
Good morning, everybody. Barry and I have teamed up together before, and when he asked me to sing and accompany me, I was delighted. So we're going to sing for you, or we're going to perform to you today, One Little Candle. When the day is dark and dreary, and your way is hard to find, don't let your heart be weary. Just keep this thought in mind. It is better to light just one little candle than to stumble in the dark. Better far that you light just one little candle. All you need is a tiny spark. If we'd all say a prayer that the world would be free, the wonderful dawn of a new day we'd see. And if everyone lit just one little candle, what a bright world this would be. If we'd all say a prayer that the world would be free, the wonderful dawn of a new day we'd see. And if everyone lit just one little candle, what a bright world this would be.
The reading this morning is from The Seven Spiritual Laws of Success by Deepak Chopra. And in the first chapter, he talks about the law of pure potentiality. The source of all creation is pure consciousness, pure potentiality seeking expression from the unmanifest to the manifest. And when we realize that our true self is one of pure potentiality, we align with the power that manifests in everything in the universe. The affluence of the universe, the lavish display and abundance of the universe, is an expression of the creative mind of nature. The more tuned in you are to the mind of nature, the more you have access to its infinite, unbounded creativity. But first, you have to go beyond the turbulence of your internal dialogue to connect with that abundant, affluent, infinite creative mind. And then you create the possibility of dynamic activity while at the same time carrying the stillness of eternal, unbounded creative mind. This exquisite combination of silent, unbounded, infinite mind, along with dynamic, bounded individual mind, is the perfect balance of stillness and movement simultaneously that can create whatever you want. The coexistence of opposites, stillness and dynamism at the same time, makes you independent of situations, circumstances, people, and things. When you quietly acknowledge this exquisite coexistence of opposites, you align yourself with the world of energy, the quantum soup, the non-material, non-stuff that is the source of the material world. This world of energy is fluid, dynamic, resilient, changing, forever in motion. And yet it is also non-changing, still, quiet, eternal, and silent. Stillness alone is the potentiality for creativity. Movement alone is creativity constricted to a certain aspect of its expression. But the combination of movement and stillness enables you to unleash your creativity in all directions, wherever the power of your attention takes you. And so it is. And this morning we have our wonderful dynamic speaker, full of energy, Miss Peggy Shinn. And my understanding is that her talk is going to be on going from resistance to reception, I believe.
Resilience.
Resilience, okay. Going from resistance to resilience, yes. So that should be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. That was a great reading that I'm hopeful I'm remembering enough of it to get it all woven into my talk, because you're right on, spot on. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be back here again and see you all open up. We can see the smiles, no masks, that's great. Well, if you want to wear a mask, you're certainly welcome to wear a mask, I understand, but it's good to look out and see the people that are here are pretty much unmasked. And maybe that's the metaphor for what we're doing in our world today anyway, is unmasking, going back to being our authentic selves at a new level, at a different space, a different place than we've been before. It's definitely been a lot of change going on. And how receptive we are to that change is part of what I want to talk about today. If I can figure out, I don't want to move this little microphone thing around too much, so if I hit that, Flo, you let me know that I've banged your ear, okay? So what I want to talk about is getting to yes. How do we live a life that comes from that positive aspect rather than the negative aspect of accepting what it is that life is today for me, here, now, in this moment? I love the song you chose today. It took me back to probably what might have been one of my first exposures to the idea that there was some metaphysical aspect to how the world worked. I remember being a child and my mother would have the television program of Norman Vincent Peale. You all old enough to remember Norman Vincent Peale? So that was my first exposure to the idea that you could like have a positive thought, or that you could change something in your mind and have a positive thought. So the program was on, I don't even remember what day of the week it was, maybe it was Sunday probably, but anyway, that was it. If everyone would light just one little candle. At the beginning of the program, when Norman Vincent Peale would come on with that deep voice about if everyone would light just one little candle, we would no longer be in the darkness. So that took me back there. Thank you for that, Terry. So today I had to practice what I'm going to preach. And I had a situation going on in my world this morning that kept me from being able to get my notes put on paper. So I have my phone up here. I'm not checking my text messages. I know that God will leave a message if I need to get back to him later. But I do have the phone on airplane mode. But I am going to kind of use this as my reference for my talk today so that I don't get myself too far afield here. The idea of resilience and resistance to me has come up in the last couple of weeks. I've been hearing things on NPR, on the news programs about mental health difficulties and people having challenges around coming back now from having been sequestered, quarantined, on vacation, whatever we might have called it. And that got me thinking more and more about this idea of resilience, and thinking from the standpoint of how my mind works. I always like to put the words together that sort of alliterate. So to me, it's like resistance was at the opposite, like Martha's talking about in her reading this morning. There's this tension of the opposites that creates the stillness and the dynamic at the same time. And I think it's a spectrum. Always I think of words that are opposite as more of a spectrum. They're not like way over here and way over there and nothing in between. That there's always a sort of this movement or transition or dynamism that she talked about in her reading that goes on between these two concepts of whatever they might be, whether it's black or white. You know, they're still gray, right? And so to me, it sounds like, you know, resistance is the opposite of resilience. It's certainly in the way of moving down the spectrum to being resilient, to bouncing back, to rising up. I spoke a couple of months back about rising from the ashes like the phoenix. Something had to die, something had to burn up in order to get to the place where it could be reborn, rekindled, like the spark of the flame, that it only takes the one little spark to start the flame of that candle. So the spectrum is pretty wide, maybe for a lot of us, between the resistance and the resilience of how long and how fast and what level of processing we have to do with ourselves to get from no to yes. And one of the things that I like to remind myself in the moment, and this is what I had to do this morning and why I'm here with the phone instead of paper over here. We'll see. I like to use this sometimes too. That I had a client that's blowing up my phone since 7:30 this morning. And ultimately, I had to just sort of surrender, like the song at the beginning, surrender to what is probably my greatest and highest good, which was to finish whatever I needed to do with him, to kind of put that all to bed, so that then I would be able to get my mind and heart and space around what I needed to be doing here today, and surrender to, I don't know if it's going to be my greatest and highest good, but I just finally had to surrender and deal with it. And that took me a minute or two, you know, to get from A to B, to get from no to yes. Now, sometimes it's quicker, sometimes it's a whole lot longer, sometimes it's years. You can, you don't have to raise your hand, but I bet you every one of us in here has had the circumstance where it may have taken us a while to let go of something. And just remember, like the Course in Miracles teaches us, there, you know, there's no order of size in miracles. There's no order of events in time. There is no space and time in the divine, right? So it is what it is. We get there when we get there. And the question about it is are we conscious in the process? How fast do we get to a level of consciousness in the process? We've all heard that famous axiom of attributed to Carl Jung, that what we resist persists. Well, I started thinking about that when it came to my mind, and I thought, well, okay, I think it's true. It seems to be true in my world, in my life. But sort of from the metaphysical science of mind perspective, how and why is it that what we resist persists? And then what can we do to shift that resistance to resilience? How can we get from no to yes? How can we get from from negative to positive, in Norman Vincent Peale's world, to get to the positive thinking? And saying yes to it is about saying yes to what is. You know, we talk about our life, my life, God's life, whose life is it anyway, kind of thing. I submit to you that we don't really have a life, we are a life. And that God that lives itself through, in, around, and for us, that you mentioned in your vision statement, and that partly was what with Martha reading this morning too, is that power within us that it is not of us, but it is the power that's available to us, in, through, around, and for us. To get conscious about it, to allow ourselves to get that intuitive part that Karen's song talked about this morning, and allow that spiritual intuition to guide us and to open up to that potentiality of all possibilities in whatever moment. When I'm busy saying, no, 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 I don't want to go there, or I don't want this, or I didn't like what happened, it wasn't my idea, or it wasn't my preference, I'm busy doing all that, and I'm forgetting the reality of it is that it is what it is. And how long am I going to sit there in my little pity party or whatever and resist it and not accept it, not surrender to it? Because in that moment, I don't have access to that creativity that Martha's reading was mentioning about, in that whole realm of potentiality of the possibilities. We are going to have something created. Why not choose? Why not choose how and where and what we want to see and interpret life through that lens, rather than tell ourselves a story of, oh, I don't like that, I don't want that, that's not, I don't want to be here, or I don't want to be doing what I'm doing. I mean, have you ever had that experience? Yeah, I don't want to be where I am. I don't want to be doing what I'm doing. I don't like this job. Or, any of those things can be coming up in our mind, right? This is going to be, I need to hold this in my hand, I guess, because I'm going to keep whacking the podium trying to open up my phone again. So we're saying yes to life, and I was looking at what Ernest Holmes has to tell us about the idea of resistance, and he doesn't, I don't think resilience was the kind of word that was popular in Ernest's day. I didn't find much about that, but I found a couple things about resistance and saying yes that I'd like to share with you. I have to put my glasses down here. So one of the things that he starts off with, that I wanted to start off with, is where he talks about, he's reminding us that Jesus, that great master guy from a few thousand years ago that we pretend to follow his teachings, said, resist not. Resist not. And Ernest tells us that what he thinks Jesus meant was that the non-recognition of what is the only way to avoid it. That is true according to the law of cause and effect. For what we persist in recognizing, we persist in holding in place. So if we're busy resisting something, it's because we're spending a lot of time looking at it, recognizing it, making it a big part of what's the tail that's wagging our dog in a given moment. That which we refuse to recognize, we neutralize, and then it's no longer there so far as we are concerned. So I thought about Emmett Fox and the Golden Key in reading that. If I'm going to refuse to recognize something, if that's the key that Ernest is preaching to us, that we have the ability to choose not to recognize something, not to spend our time and attention on it, then it can be like the golden key of Emmett Fox. I just look away. Just look away. And maybe, in the process of looking away, decide, make a conscious choice that I'm looking at God. I'm looking at the spiritual. I'm finding the divine. I'm sniffing out God, finding evidence for that rather than evidence for why I'm not happy, and telling myself the story that I'm not happy about whatever it is that is taking my attention instead of my intention towards the positive. Because generally speaking, what we're focusing on is something that is kind of a no, right? We don't want it. We're resisting it. And his further conversation about saying yes. I want to read you what Ernest has to say about that as soon as I can. I have too many marks in my book, and I don't like to take them out because when I get the book out, I like to look at them again. Anyway, on page 118 in the third paragraph, he said that the subconscious mind always says yes. So if our intention is to get from no to yes, it's the subconscious that's focusing more on the no that we're not sometimes even aware of. But if we can use our conscious mind to take us to the yes, then we are minding our mind. We're moving that thought process where we want it to go. So he says, subjectivity is entirely receptive and neutral, as we've learned, and it takes our thoughts only the way we think them. No other alternative. If I say I'm unhappy, and I continue to say it, the subconscious mind says, yes, you are unhappy. And it keeps me unhappy as long as I say it. For thoughts are things, and an active thought will provide an active condition for good or evil. And it's about this tendency of the thought and the mental attitude that that Ernest continues to bring out throughout the book, because he's trying to get us to change our thinking in order to change our lives. What an idea. So he's talking about, how we can find the mental cause and where we go for the changes that we might be looking for in how to get there. But in the final analysis, really, he just says all that mental confusion and all that, what he calls mental prostration, is really to no avail. It's about getting that thought tendency on the right track. And he talks about how to take that tendency of thought through the process of treatment. So he talks about getting to the level of using the steps of treatment with a focus that is much more strongly placed on the first two steps. You guys remember the first two steps of Science of Mind, 5 steps of treatment? The first one is recognition. Interesting that he's talking about what we have to recognize in the earlier part that I was reading you, and what we choose not to recognize. So in the case of the first step of treatment, we're looking to recognize that God is all there is, all there ever was, all there ever will be, all that anything is God, anything and everything is all God. So if we are not getting past that first step, we're not going to get anywhere with our intention to make this shift. And the second step is the unification. So we start out with, are you ready to receive the 5 steps of treatment? And in the book, he talks about not moving from that point as a practitioner, which he chooses to believe we're all practitioners. We now have this credential that we offer to people like Martha and me that go through the classes and do. And we call ourselves practitioners, but we're all practitioners of Science of Mind if we're in this room or on the Zoom or on the Zoom. I have to go that way. Anyway, because we are aware of our awareness of things. Our consciousness is conscious of our consciousness. And if we move from that first couple of steps without really getting the feeling deep in my heart, then the realization step that comes next about what we're going to declare that we have or that we are, or that it is right here, right now with us, isn't going to have the strength that it needs to have. So he talks about changing this tendency of thought, from moving from no to yes, to get that tendency of thought so your mental attitude and the mental environment in which you're living is more and more second nature, more and more part of your subconscious. It's kind of like when you first learned to drive, you weren't able to do what you can do today, almost second nature, almost unconsciously, because you've practiced it so many times. You know how to put the car into reverse. But when you're first learning to drive, you didn't know these things. The same way with almost any job that we do or any task that we perform. If it's something we do quite often, a great deal of it is in our subconscious, not just only in our conscious. So he's encouraging us to do that. And then I wanted to share a little bit with you about stillness that Martha talked about. Oops, I have knocked your thing down, Flo. That I thought was so cool that your reading, included this concept of stillness. And So this book by Eckhart Tolle, I think most of you probably have heard of him, is called Stillness Speaks. And it is a little compendium of thematic comments or things that have been excerpted from his talks or his satsangs or wherever he speaks, I think is how they put it together. Stillness speaks because Eckhart spoke. But here we get back to the initial song that we were singing today about surrendering to our highest and greatest good in order to get to yes to life. He says, your acceptance is what takes you to a deeper level where your inner state, as well as your sense of self, no longer depend on your mind's judgment of this is good or this is bad or yes or no. And when you say yes to the isness, he's calling it the isness of life, that what is, when you accept this moment as it actually is, you feel a sense of spaciousness within you that is deeply peaceful. Martha talked about that in her reading from Deepak Chopra. On the surface, you may still be happy when it's sunny or not so happy when it's rainy, and you may be happy at winning $1 million or unhappy at losing all your possessions. But neither happiness nor unhappiness, however, go all that deep anymore. They are ripples on the surface of your being, the background peace within which you remain undisturbed, regardless of the nature of the outside conditions. The yes to what is will reveal a dimension of depth within you that is dependent neither on external conditions nor on the internal conditions of constantly fluctuating thoughts and emotions. Take that in for a little bit there. Not dependent on your interpretation of your thought of the moment. Move your thought of the moment to it's a moment of unlimited possibility, of the potentiality that Martha read to us about this morning, rather than your interpretation or your decision, your thought about what you believe it's all about. And I'm going to pick up my earring that fell off, so sorry. My happiness is not always dependent on having my earrings on, but sometimes it is. But I'll take them both off so that they'll match. My ears will match. I don't know. This thing here that the microphone thing that goes around your ears, around my ears, not around yours. Hopefully my talk is going around your ears. But this how and why that this is true. So I have a couple of little tips. I want to give out my idea of where I think this could take us and how we could get there. What's the path? So I was thinking about the analogy of being on the road and having a flat tire. Well, we're on this journey. We're trying to get ourselves from A to B spiritually as well as physically. Now, if I have a flat tire, I'm not happy. I mean, who's happy about having a flat tire in the middle of the highway or whatever? On the other hand, if I look at it from the standpoint of, well, it is, and if I embrace that isness that Eckhart calls it, without a lot of resistance, I might get the tire fixed faster and back on the road. And what I might have happen in the meantime, and I've had this happen in my world, I'm going to meet somebody I've never known before. I'm going to have something go into my existence that wasn't probably in my plan for the day, and isn't going to be maybe in my plan for tomorrow or ever again. But there'll be some interchange, there'll be something that has to go on because I got to get that tire fixed. And I'm not capable of jacking up the car myself. So I'm going to call my roadside service. I'm going to call upon my God team. I'm going to call my roadside service to come and help me and get me out of this mess. And I'm going to meet somebody, and I'm going to have something happen. I'm going to have an interchange with someone that I probably never had seen before or will ever see again. What a potentiality. What a possibility that's there for me if I'm open to it and if I'm willing to surrender to that moment and accept what is, rather than saying, no, I won't go. So saying yes instead of no to what is. That's my life, is God's life now. Am I giving God a good time? Or am I sitting around saying, I'm going to miss my appointment, I have a flat tire, this. No. So I have a feeling that that there's 2 or 3 things that I would be going through it, because I have these little, rules that I try to guide my life by. And one of them has to do with moving from the point of where I am to the point of where I want to be. And I call that attention, intention, no tension, AKA peace and happiness. Okay. So the attention, intention, and no tension. And using the conscious state to get there. Ernest says in the book there that whatever is held in consciousness until it becomes a part of the subjective side of thought tends to take place in our world of affairs. It's like what you think about, you bring about. That's on page 119. And if we say yes, and if we're positive about it, and surrender to that moment of isness, like Eckhart's teaching us, I'm paying attention. So with the flat tire thing, back to that, if I'm going to pay attention, there's 2 or 3 other things that I think I need to have. I need to have to get from no to yes, and from resistance to resilience. I have to have availability, I have to have flexibility, and vulnerability. So the availability in the flat tires, I'm just going to accept that I got this flat tire, and I'm going to pay attention to what's going on right now. I got to call these people. I got to watch for the tow truck guy to come. I got to watch for the highway traffic. I got to be careful about, how I handle everything. I got to put my attention, my full attention on that moment right now to get that thing handled and not have anything further go off the rails on me. The flexibility part, I always think about the example that we are given often about how the mighty oak that's so strong, is so strong that it's brittle enough to break in the windstorm. So when the life storm comes along, do I break or do I bend? I want to be more like the palm tree you see in the TV news when they have the hurricanes down in the Caribbean, and the palm trees are like bent over completely to the ground practically and bounce back up again after the wind and the storm has gone past. They go unharmed ultimately, whereas the oak tree might have lost a branch or 2, and that is not whole in the sense that it was whole before the storm came. So that's my flexibility that my dad used to tell us kids. There were 4 of us in the family. The flexibility is our middle name, and I always try to remember my dad talking about that too. So the availability, flexibility, vulnerability. Well, my vulnerability is I'm stuck on the road here with this. My flexibility is I got to call and change my appointments. I've got to do things with people that I've maybe made commitments to, or I've got to just sit there and change my mind about what the day is going to be. And the vulnerability part about it is I have to accept that I need help. I can't fix that tire myself. And I need help. I'm always ready to offer help, but not always ready to admit that I need help. So that part of it is the vulnerability that takes me back to getting from attention, intention, no tension, and using the ABCs that I have taught to you in the last couple times I've been here speaking. The ABCs, the spiritual ABCs, are your awareness, your breathing into the moment to say, okay, I'm willing to say yes to this. And then if that breath takes me to that place where I can feel the release, or I can feel the expansion rather than the contraction of what I'm resisting in that moment, I know then I'm ready to make the conscious choice. Call the tow truck. Make the choice to call my client and fess up and say, I probably should have replaced this tire last week, but I didn't do it, and then here I am, and here's what's going on. So that first 3 that I want to get to, the attention, intention, no tension, takes the second 3 of the availability, flexibility, and vulnerability, as I see it, to get to yes. And all of this incorporates what we're talking about here with Ernest quotes about the tendency that I have developed. If I have this tendency of my thought process that I am practicing the presence of accepting what is present in this moment, and I'm prayed up with that as much as I'm possibly able to bring my spiritual practices to that level, then my thought tendency is going to be creating an environment and an ambiance where maybe I won't sit there for an hour and a half boo-hooing that I'm waiting for some truck driver to stop and help me or something. You know, that may not be what's going to happen, but it could be. It could be, you know. I have to be open to that potentiality of the possibilities that life brings me when I just sit there and say yes, or when I just sit there. You know, they also serve who only sit and wait, right? You never know. But it's about listening to that intention and being willing to let that intention get some attention and allow that to bring me to the place of no tension. And now I'm trying to get to my place in my notes here, where I think I've about said what I want to say. Yep, here we go. So, in closing, I want to take you back to Eckhart Tolle, and again, maybe back to Karen Drucker's song about the surrendering. He says in here, surrender, one could say, is the inner transition from resistance to acceptance, from no to yes. And when you surrender, your sense of self shifts from being identifying with that reaction or mental judgment that you had, and having a little space around that reaction or judgment. It's a shift from identification with form, that is the thought or the emotion that you're experiencing, to being and recognizing yourself as that which has no form. In other words, all just spacious awareness. Whatever you accept completely will take you to peace. Think about that. Am I completely accepting in order to have that peace? If I listen to Eckhart, that's what I need to have. And whatever you accept completely will take you to peace, even including the acceptance in that moment that you cannot accept, that you are still in resistance. That's a part of the process too. So leave life alone. Let it be. Let it be what it is right here, right now, for each of us in this moment, and say yes to it. And say yes to it as completely as you can and as quickly as you can. I'm not saying that, you know, you're not going to grieve some things, you're not going to regret some things, you're not going to resist for longer, you know. It's all about that. And we go back to Jesus. Resist not. Say yes to life. And just be happy. Just be happy. Namaste. So I think I do the treatment now, right? Okay. Oh, are you going to play a little background, Barry?
I can try.
Oh, okay. You're just getting ready for the next gig, next part of the gig. Okay, no problem. Okay, right here, right now, we take that awareness of what we've talked about here today and we breathe into that. We breathe into that in this moment, recognizing that my life and your life, that our life is our life now. It is our life and it is God's life, our mind and God's mind. And we allow that wholeness and the unicity of who we are as sentient beings, connected to that spirit, that outer and inner intelligence, that power and presence that is of us, but not as us. It is as spirit moving through, in, for, and around us. And we continue to hold that idea as the guiding spiritual principle for the day. That spirit that I choose to call God is guiding and guarding every moment in my life, no matter what it looks like to me, no matter what it feels like to me, no matter what I'm resisting, it is. And in that isness, I see the divine. I know that the connection between me and spirit is always there. If I'm not seeing it or feeling it, I'm the one that moved. So I step back towards, I move away from, I invite you to move away from do not recognize, do not give power and thought to resisting what is. Turn away from it to spirit in order to be shown the way, shown the potential, shown the opportunity, provided with the instinct that might move you to a new creative level within the moment of resistance as you step out of that energy of that emotion and into the energy of yes. Your subconscious is saying yes to whatever you're going to tell it. So tell it what you want it to hear. I'm telling that, you're telling that, and I'm declaring for all of us that we are speaking our word to ourselves. We are lighting that spark of the one candle that we are able to be in that moment to ourselves and to our life that is the life of God, to move into a higher level of frequency of yes to the universe, of yes to the friendliness of the universe, knowing that we are guided, guarded, and protected by Spirit always. And we open ourselves up to accepting and allowing and surrendering to that moment in order to bring to it what is in us to offer, rather than looking for what the moment has to offer me, what is in me for it, rather than what's in the moment for me. And I have great gratitude and thankfulness for the knowledge that I can do this, and for the results that come into my life, for the manifestation that Ernest talked about in my reading in the book, that eventually it shows up in my worldly affairs if I do the work in the inner world of my mind. And it is the power and the greatness that lies within each one of us that is so far greater than any of our circumstances or any of our interpretations of our circumstances that we tap into. We tap into for the resilience now and in any moment in the future that it is needful. And that resilience comes forth in the process of moving from no to yes. I let these words go into the law, knowing that they are so in our lives, operating here today, now, in this moment, that we are non-resistant to. And so it is. Amen. Thank you. Now I'll get out of here and get some of my stuff out of here so that you can
Thank you, Barry and Terry, for your musical contributions, and to you too, Judy, for leading us in song. As we receive our virtual and in-person gifts, we give thanks for the offerings already given and those we will be receiving, because we know that giving and receiving are both part of the one flow. We bless these gifts, and we know that they are multiplied throughout our community. Now, there are a number of folks who have contributed to the production of this service. We are grateful for their service, and we thank you for joining us today. And lastly, stay around in the Zoom meeting after service to visit or join us in the social hall. Please stand and read with me the benediction, and followed by our congregational song. Spirit in the midst of us is mighty. Joy, peace, and eternal life are our true nature and flow through us into the world, and so it is.